Well, 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 we finally made it to our very first spin-off. You didn't think I'd be only covering mainline games, did you? So, Final Fantasy IV The After Years, where do I begin? This game was first released in 2008 on mobile phones in Japan. It came to the rest of the world a year later for WiiWare. For this video, I am playing the iOS version because that is what I had on hand. When I first played this game a couple years ago, I had the most strong opinions on it. There were certain characters and parts that I absolutely hated with every fiber of my being, and then there were parts that I would think about years later that still watered my crops and sent my soul into flights of fanciful happiness. Now that I have replayed the game, I don't understand how I had these opinions. This game is more lukewarm than the mug of tea I left steeping on my counter for an hour while writing the script. Like, I have never seen a game balance good and bad things so well to the point that it just becomes a cocktail of indifference. Like, there were moments when I saw the light and I was like, maybe this game is actually really good and I'm just not giving it enough of a chance. And then it went right back to its own bullshit and the glimmer was gone. I'm being really vague right now, so I'm gonna stop rambling and give you some actual specifics. So, unlike Final Fantasy IV, After Years is split into an episodic nature. There are 10 total, and the story is split up into 5 phases. Phase 1 consists of Theodore's tale. Theodore is Cecil's son. Phase 2 consists of Young's, Rydia's, Edge's, Palom's, Porum's, and Edward's tale. Phase 3 is Kane's tale, Phase 4 is Golbez's tale, and Phase 5 is the last tale titled The Crystals, which features everyone! Yay! So, our story begins with a bit of a blast from the past. Theodore rides in an airship with Biggs and Wedge on his way to do his Baron Redwing's initiation test. Now, Theodore has some misgivings about this because he's been living in his parents' shadow his entire life, as he is so often reminded. Theodore passes his test with flying colors all on his own, in the process awakening his latent powers Edge style, and bada bing bada boom, we're on our way back to Baron. Now, of course, all of this is just a touch too simple and easy, so something had to go wrong. And boy, does this shit ever go wrong! The second moon that disappeared at the end of Final Fantasy IV, some of you may remember it as the Lunarian's moon, reappears for the first time in 17 years, and with it all of the mischief and shenanigans of the past. Theodore's airship is attacked by monsters that are aggravated by the moon, and with that, we cut to Cecil back in Baron. Baron is no better off than Theodore and is being attacked by monsters. Cecil tries to defend the castle while Rosa and Cid evacuate everyone, but even war heroes can't hold off endless streams of monsters, as we often learn in Final Fantasy games. With that, we meet the main antagonist of the game, the mysterious girl who wields the power of the Eidolons for some unknown reason. Cecil goes down, and mysteriously, Baron and its king fall under some mind control spell very similar to that of the past. I wonder who could have done that. We cut back to Theodore and everyone is dead, except him. He almost dies too, but then he's saved by some mysterious stranger who uses the signature move of a dragoon and jumps on the enemies. I wonder who that could be. You don't get to know, because he's just the hooded man. We travel with Kane, the hooded man, back to Baron, and he very quickly realizes that Cecil is not Cecil anymore. So he takes Theodore out of Baron before they get the good kill. Unfortunately, they are pursued, but Kane is able to get him to Mist before anything bad can happen, and that's where Theodore's story ends. Phase 2 has a lot of reoccurring cutscenes and story elements because they're all happening simultaneously, so I'm just going to give you the Cold Notes version. Rydia witnesses the Eidolons all turn to stone and mind-controlled by the mysterious girl. Her and Luca, the dwarven princess, are almost killed by Titan, but are saved by the man in black. I would put another in, but I feel like this one is a little less obvious, so I'll refrain. Edge and his ninja apprentices kinda scout out the whole world after they notice Babel tremoring. They go to check it out and notice that it's acting the same as it did 17 years ago. They get attacked by the mysterious girl, but escape thanks to Edge's quick thinking. They end up on Rydia's airship. Young and Edward both catch wind of Baron being a little bitch again, so they head there to make sure Cecil's really Cecil and not a mind control boy. Palom travels to Troya in order to train a pop trainee, Leonora, in black magic. And he kind of realized some shit's going down because Troya is generally very pacifistic, so they don't really need black magic unless something bad's happening. Which it did, because Baron tries to steal their crystal again. But luckily, Palom and Leonora take it to the Lodestone Cavern, and it's safe until it's not and it gets taken. This was my favorite episode, just a little disclaimer. Porum's episode is certifiably the worst because of the terrible fucking grind it is. However, it does show us Dragoon Kane, which, what the heck? How can Dragoon Kane still exist if the Hooded Man is Kane? Well, Porum's episode also shows the mirror chamber from Final Fantasy IV. You know, the one where Cecil's darkness physically manifested and he had to defeat it? Well, it's all shattered, and now there's 2 Kanes running around. Very suspicious. Well, evil Kane steals Mysidia's crystal in exchange for the mysterious girl letting him kill Cecil, and off we go. Which brings us to Phase 3, Kane's episode. Kane's tale fills us in on the blanks. It shows Kluya leading him to the mirror chamber, and it shows him being split, so now we know for sure that Dragoon Kane is evil Kane. We pick right up where Porum's tale left off, and we end up in Baron. Before Dragoon Kane actually makes it to Cecil, he runs into the Hooded Man, Rosa, Cid, and Theodore. Luckily, Kane actually wins the fight this time, and he's able to become a holy dragoon. And then we go face Cecil. Phase 4 is actually more of a prologue episode. It takes place before everything else, and it shows the lead up to the mysterious girl getting to the blue planet. Because she stops off on the moon first and meets Golbez and Fusoya, and also very nicely shatters all of the moon's crystals, thus releasing Zeromus' lingering will, the big bad from last time we were in this world. Fusoya and Golbez do their best, but they ain't the Holy Five from before, what can I say? Fusoya stays behind and sends Golbez to protect the blue planet. Phase 5 is the conclusion, and it's split into 2 parts as well. The first part consists of rounding up all the characters. We just fly around as Edge and Rydia and collect everyone from wherever they left off, and it's very reminiscent of World of Ruin from Final Fantasy VI, right down to the world being absolutely destroyed because the moon is approaching Earth and meteors are messing shit up. We collect all our people and all our Eidolons, and everyone's A-okay except Cecil, who is weirdly acting like an empty shell for some reason, and we make our way to the moon, which we find out is actually not the Lunarian moon, it's some other weird moon. What's with all the moons? Well, anyways, we have to traverse a version of the lunar subterrane, and guys, this is it. This is the cream of the crop. If younger me approached older me and said, "Hey, this game is really good," I think this dungeon is the only part they could have showed me, and I would have actually believed them. Because of the continue function on iOS, you don't actually need to fight any of the actual enemies, only the bosses, and the bosses are actually fun and challenging. There's also cute cutscenes between each boss, which were those flickering moments where I thought the game was good. Granted, I wrote this part before I got to the last couple bosses in the depths of the lunar subterrane, and let's just say that in typical Final Fantasy fashion, the difficulty spike comes on very quickly. I had to grind out about 15 levels before I was able to get through the 3rd phase of the final boss, but the rest was smooth sailing from there. So, I don't recommend running from every single fight in the lunar subterrane. You might want to do a couple of them, otherwise you're just going to have to grind at the end. But, well, I will admit, the reveal at the end kind of left me a little underwhelmed. We find out the moon threatening us all was actually a spacecraft made by some long-dead people. Their own planet became uninhabitable, and they escaped to space, eventually dying out after generations of wandering. The creator was the last of the dead species, and spent his remaining time documenting all living forms across various planets to see and comprehend what his own people should have done. The way he recorded them? Through the crystals. He created them and sent them to every single planet he thought could potentially have life. Hence why the Maenads, or the mysterious girls, were collecting them in this game. They were collecting the data. We end up defeating the creator, he sends the moon away, and everything goes back to normal. For a moment, everyone had a minor, "Oh my goodness, should we be worshipping these things?" about the crystals, and then they kind of collectively decided that regardless of where they came from, the crystals were only useful because of what they chose to do with them. And so all's hunky-dory, and the boys are back to peace and prosperity. One little thing about the story I did not mention because I didn't really find a place for it. is one of your characters can actually die in the game. When you're trying to save Cecil, if you don't have the right party equipped, Golbez will die, and then he is dead for good. My first playthrough, I killed him off, and then I saw people be like, oh, you should use Golbez for the final boss. And I was like, you can't, he's dead. And then I found out that actually he's not dead if you're not an idiot. So yeah, that's a little cool thing. I like when games do that, when they give you an option to kill off a character that you don't realize is there until later. Cries in shadow, anyways. So there are a lot of characters in the game, and a lot of them have very little substance just because of the time constraints in which each episode had to focus on each character. So all of my thoughts are kind of just dispersed throughout the video. Which brings us to combat. So, despite the combat being based off of Final Fantasy IV, which I very much enjoyed, it somehow was made worse in this game. For some reason, it just felt way slower than in Final Fantasy IV. Like, I had it set the same as I normally did, like active as fast as it'll go. But it just felt like the animations for the characters just dragged so long and made it less enjoyable. Despite that, there were a few interesting additions that made combat fun, such as the moon phases and ban moves. The moon phases made you have to kind of think about your team comps and strategies because certain phases of the moon affected your abilities. The 4 were white magic, black magic, physical attacks, and just skill abilities. And usually one was boosted while another was lessened during certain phases of the moon. This sounds cool in theory, but all it really did was up your tent count, because until like the very end of the game, your party is fixed. You can't change it. So there's no point in like strategizing for one type of phase of the moon when it'd just be easier to sleep until the right phase for your party. Ban moves, on the other hand, were very much enjoyable. They were essentially these like 15-second special moves between 2 or more characters, and I spent way more time than I'm comfortable disclosing grinding them. More on that later though. In terms of music, the game didn't really have anything new, because if it ain't broke, don't fix it. It just used the Final Fantasy IV OST. But it did have a couple of new tracks for some of the new bosses and areas, and I really enjoyed the Mysterious Girls theme. Every time it played, my brother would comment on the fact that it sounded like boss music, so it did its job. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. The significance of rat tails might be something I research, because this item has now popped up in 3 out of the 5 games we played so far, and they're all used as a symbol of strength. I love everyone's capes. I forgot to mention this in the Final Fantasy IV video, and I'm so mad because there's gonna be less people that watch this one, I know it. But, okay, I love that the movesets for each type of magic is slightly different, because it shows that each school of magic, while similar, do have fundamental differences. Unlike in Final Fantasy III and 2 and 1, where the animation was the same, it's actually different for white magic, black magic, and summoning, which is very cool. Leonora and Palom are the best pairing in this game. It's a shame that Palom's episode is so bogged down with dungeon crawling, because honestly, their dynamic was the most enjoyable one.
I thought Palom would start acting his age. Me.
Sir, that is a 6-year-old boy. What are you expecting? It's crazy how many parallels to the main game they tried to cram into this one. Harley with desert fever, Kain and Theodore getting attacked in the Kaipo Inn like Cecil and Rydia were, Palom turning himself to stone. It's like they knew the only people who would play this game were the hardcores. I'm not gonna rehash my love-turned-distaste for Edge, but god damn, the way any lingering nostalgia for him dried up the minute he grabbed at Izayoi. Like, bro, you're lucky you're a tank in battle and that most of the time you're actually not that bad, but buddy boy, you're on thin fucking ice. Did they forget that they showed us what Golbez looked like? Like, obviously they didn't, because they re-show it in this game, so why does his new sprite look so different? You never realize how much voice actors hard carry until they're gone. They readapted the scene in Fabul when Kain takes the crystal from the original Final Fantasy IV, except without voice acting, because there's no voice acting in this game. And it's just like, without the delivery of the voice actors, it just seems way like less cool and kind of ridiculous. When Golbez like flicks his cape and like sucks Rosa up, Like, with voice acting, it sounded kind of intimidating. Without it, it looks so stupid. How dare this game make me actually consider the fact that the 4 elemental Archfiends weren't just evil for the sake of being evil, and were only as loyal to Golbez as they were because he gave them a home when they had none. As I mentioned in the story section, the creator sends crystals to every planet that may hold life in order to document evolution and study how his species should have evolved. Does that mean it can be argued that every Final Fantasy game takes place in the same universe and are just different planets? I'm a little surprised at how hard the new characters carried the game. I kind of would have thought that the old characters would be the stapling point because that's what a lot of people were there for, is like the nostalgia of the old characters. But I found myself enjoying the new characters plus Palom and Porom a lot more than the older ones. But that might just be because outside of Edge and Kain, I was already satisfied with everyone else's ending at the end of the original game. In conclusion, if this game can be described as anything, it's fun. It's a succinct little story wrapped up in episodes that are made to be enjoyed by fans of Original 4. The combat's a little slow, and some of the chapters are pretty grindy in nature, but all in all, it's worth picking up if you're curious about some of the characters after the events of the original Final Fantasy IV.